about supply commingling, and I was going to get to this in one of the other questions, but I'll bring it up now. In Hawaii, there is a high proportion of hydrogen already mixed in with the natural gas supply, or the engineered gas supply that they have in Hawaii. And there's also a significant interest in states to put biogas into pipeline systems in greater quantities than we've seen before, renewable fuels. And California has a program that's a directed biofuels program. How do you see the natural gas infrastructure in the U.S. being able to adapt to the introduction of more methane-based fuels, or even some degree of hydrogen that can be perhaps extracted out separately? Any thoughts on that?
I'll take a shot at it to begin with. I think in terms of the adaptability, the infrastructure is incredibly flexible and robust in being able to accommodate a variety of BTU contents. I'll start with that. When you think about the unconventional gas or LNG, the various renewable sources that could be there, all of those things can be readily accommodated within the infrastructure. What you really are talking about is the ability to control that quality at the beginning, because when you introduce that throughout the infrastructure, there's an expectation that at the end that consumer is going to receive the BTU content that they're obligated to have. I guess you say their uses are obligated to have, but the flexibility is there. The ability to either treat or accommodate, either sweeten it up, if you will, or filter it out. Those are all capable. I think the other piece that you were talking about, though, is can the system also be used to transport hydrogen? And it can. There's been some fair amount of work done in that area, and I can't remember exactly what the percentages are, but it's 15 to 25 or 30% in that range that can be transported through the system. However, there is always a however, is that you have to be able to, when you inject that, you also have to be able to remove that before it's introduced to the customer. So all of those things are possible. So it's not so much a technological issue. It's how do you best balance all of those things. And maybe that gets to one of your earlier questions, is how do we sell the commodity? Do we sell it as a cubic foot, or do we sell it as a BTU? And there's quite a bit of discussion in that area, and I think you may see that there'll be an interest in shifting toward more of a metering on a BTU basis as opposed to a simple cubic foot. Now it's converted, there's an assumption, but I think you'll see as you begin to accommodate more of those, I'll call them alternative fuels, you'll see a shift in that direction, is my perception.
So it's not inconceivable that we could see the pipeline systems in the U.S. be places where we have a commingling of hydrogen along with natural gas, and that certain customers who elect to take a BTU priced commodity and have the technology can extract the hydrogen out for their own use, and other customers might continue to just enjoy a blended fuel.
It's certainly feasible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's already done right now on a different level with LNG in different BTU ranges, which is part of what Jim's referring to. And so it'll work.
Good.
And Frank?
We have another, oh, Dave?
Well, one of the comments I guess I'll make, and I'll take the Enbridge hat off because I don't want to propose this as the corporation's view, but my personal view is that there's no foreseeable end to fossil fuels. And if you look just in the context of natural gas, we're talking 100-year supply with shale gas, and they have now started to demonstrate not economic but technically feasible ways of mining the gas hydrates on the bottom of the ocean.
Great.
Now, this is where I think technologies like fuel cell really shine. If you have the opportunity for more efficient, lower environmental impact on the use of energy, I don't care whether that's renewable methane, some sort of bioliquid that's then reformed into hydrogen, and that's from crops that are off the agricultural soil of North America. Everything has an environmental impact, and so from a policy perspective, it is increasingly important that we start to drive investment to more efficient technologies like fuel cells, regardless of where that energy feedstock's coming from.
Frank, just one other point on that same thing, and that's a great point about hydrates, and really the Inga Foundation did a study on unconventional gas supplies. It came out about a year and a half ago. And to the extent that you look at the 2000 TCF of natural gas in the shales and other formations. The hydrates are estimated to be 200,000 to 300,000 TCF of natural gas. So if there's a way, and in 100 years people keep working at it, somebody needs to figure that out, and then we can burn natural gas just as long as everybody wants.
Gentleman over here has been patient.
My name is Robert Wickert. I'm the Technical Director of the Fuel Cell Council, and it sounded like you were encouraging the industry, the fuel cell industry, to get involved in some of the regulations and standards that might encourage the smart energy grid instead of just the smart electrical grid. Could you give me some targets of opportunity specifically where we might get involved and be effective?
I'll start with one. This is my own little soapbox, I suppose, but it's the full fuel cycle analysis piece that needs to be incorporated into building codes and appliance standards. As Rich pointed out, I don't remember the timeline on it. Do you remember the timeline on it, Rich? But that's coming up soon.
I think the deadline is November 1st, like 2 weeks.
So I would start with that.
There's got to be more than that.
That's one in particular. Another is to educate. You as an industry need to figure out what your key messages are and why you're efficient, why you're good. Be able to put that together in clear message bites and use it as an education process for Congress. Make sure that it's not a simple cap and trade type of legislation, that there's a clean energy standard, which we made reference to before, that takes into account, the natural gas industry wants it in there because if you're looking at just reducing emissions, natural gas is going to win on an even playing field with any other fuel. Fuel cells have their own advantages. You have to figure out a way to sell them, and you got to put your brains, in your industry together and gain footholds. It's already happened in Connecticut. Where's Joel? Joel's out there somewhere, maybe, unless there's Joel right in the front row. These lights are sort of blinding when you're sitting up here. Connecticut made some major inroads in their state legislature, and the states are the ones that control a lot of that local energy policy. The FERC deals with wholesale electric transmission, and there may be another opportunity there for fuel cell industry to make inroads with the FERC.
I'd also, again, encourage you and any industry participants to get involved with the North American Energy Standards Board. In so many instances, that body, that forum, is the forum by which industry seeks to develop a consensus around various policy issues that may be being considered either by the regulatory utility commissions on a retail standpoint, both natural gas and electricity, and from a wholesale standpoint. And so we have specific segments. We have balanced voting to assure that no particular industry group or segment that their voice is not heard. So we're the only ANSI accredited standards development organization that is there specific for the energy sector. And so I just really would encourage you to learn more about that organization and how you can get involved. And it will provide you some inroads and some understanding as to the interplay between the regulatory commissions as well as the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Frank?
North American Energy Standards Board, NASB.
Frank, one other thing.
Sure.
NARUC, the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners. That's a group of all the state agencies, their regulatory commissions get together. They have national conferences all over the place, board meetings, it's a big group, thousands of people in NARUC. And that's another key one for educating them.
I'll add a couple of more areas. We've all mentioned, I think we've even used the word enabling as attributable to natural gas. There's a recognition, beginning to be a recognition, if you will, or an awakening on the part of the electric side of the industry. There's an assumption that natural gas will be there. I think that needs to be elevated. so that it goes beyond the assumption. There needs to be some recognition and direct communication to really bring that to the forefront so that those become part of everybody's thinking. Just how do we get to the smart energy future? And we need to make sure that we make that interdependency a working process.
I want to make just one observation about this, Bob's point, that over the past 5 or 6 years, perhaps, the amount of noise relative to energy has gotten louder and louder in the whole country, in fact, worldwide. And that the fuel cell industry, by and large, is a quiet, polite industry, and a very small industry relative to other industries such as the coal industry or the electric utility industry or even the oil and gas industry. And that whether you're involved in debates through the U.S. Fuel Cell Council or some other organization, or whether you just have quiet conversations wherever you reside with your congressional districts or with members of associations mentioned here, the industry can't afford to be quiet because there's a lot of people talking about their own vested interest in energy who won't bring up fuel cells. They just simply will not put that into the equation because it's not in their interests. Not that they're biased, but they just will talk about their own technologies. And everybody in this room has an obligation to be as noisy as anyone else when it comes to your vantage point. Without that visibility, you won't get heard. It's just the way it is in the world of large energy politics. There was a question back here from someone. I think they may have decided to give up. Did he leave? He passed and went the other way. Anyone else have any questions from the floor?
Joel Reinbold, CCAT. And let me just ask the panel collectively. I think this came up a couple of times, but how critical is it to have a focused approach, and that is seek either utility ownership, rate basing, to try to connect the dots between the industry and return on investment. And I could even throw that out with two utilities. How critical is it to have the rate basing on the electric utility side? How critical is it to have a rate based the industry on the gas utility side? Is this something that should be actively sought on the state side? Is this something that could be sought on the federal side as the removal of any prohibitions for that rate basing?
Let me rephrase that, Joel. I think I heard it a little differently. That there are certain cross benefits between if a gas industry puts an investment in for its own type of industry and an electric utility puts an investment in. There are often cross benefits. And is there correct me if I got this wrong, but is there a need for the two industries to recognize where there's mutual value in those investments and advocate for kind of a rate-making policy that would allow those investments to be made versus not being made? Did I get that right? Sort of?